I'm gonna take a seat. I'm really excited about what Carol is doing here with the in a new position. I'm really honored that we have a CPS who's actually filling in the position that Larry held for so long to get us started in this process of recovery. My story may be a little different from the stories you've heard this morning because I was a late bloomer. And I say that because I didn't know until 5 years ago that I had an illness disorder. But let me just tell a little bit about myself. I was born, well, I grew up in Locust Grove, Georgia, long before I-75 and before Tanger Mall or Tanger Shopping Center. And I went to a small elementary school. And I was next to the youngest of 8 children by my mom and dad. My dad was a hard worker. We did farm work and that sort of thing. And we were sort of isolated because of where we lived. It was in the rural area. Didn't know a whole lot about anything. Got a big kick out of going to Griffin, which to us was like coming to Atlanta, because that's where my grandma lived. And she lived, of course, with my cousins and my aunt. And it was a big deal to go to Griffin. And so when you went to Griffin, you went to the city, you were exposed to certain kinds of things, and you saw things, and you get excited about what you want to do with your life when you grow up. And but my growing up, I spent a lot of time with my younger brother, and that was okay. We grew up to love and share each other and work around the house and do farming. And there's 5 boys and 3 girls from the union of my mom and dad, and everyone seemed quote unquote normal. Everyone, no birth defects, no ailments of any type. So we're a pretty healthy bunch. I remember going to elementary school, and for the first time, coming in contact with well, he was a larger kid, but he was about the same age that I was. But he didn't come to school on a regular basis. His family kept him locked away at home. And when he came to the classroom or to the school, he was really aggressive. I think he was happy, he was laughing, but he was bouncing all over the place. And, you know, of course, most of us were afraid because we were frightened of him. So I grew up in a time when people were still being locked away or isolated from the community, and for this, those with developmental disabilities or mental health issues. And I thought no more of that. You just saw him once a year perhaps, and he'd go away. When I was in 2nd grade, however, a cousin from Griffin molested me, and my life sort of changed from the standpoint of harboring shame and guilt on the inside, and not being able to express that, and not really understanding what had taken place, and so I kept it to myself, blaming myself, of course, and wondering how I got myself in this situation. And being told, you better not tell, that, you know, sort of compounded the issue, because he was a larger guy. But nevertheless, so I grew up with that. When I was in the 3rd grade, and I'm having to do this in order to establish for you exactly where I think my mental health distortion started. Our house, we had a big farmhouse, and it caught a fire. Back in those days, you had to put wood in the stove to get it heated up so the bread could be made and the villas could be cooked, so to speak. And this particular day, I just put an enormous amount of newspaper in the stove, and I think the lifting, the paper going up the, I forgot what you call it. But anyway, there was a fire that started between the roof and more like the attic area of the house. And and I was the oldest person there at the house. No, my sister was the oldest, but of course I was the oldest boy, and so I took on the responsibility of going up on top of the house, trying to put the fire out, and of course was unable to do that, and eventually the house burned, and in that process we lost everything, and the family was separated, and I again absorbed guilt. Had I not done what I did, then perhaps we would still have that farmhouse. And so the family was separated, and in that process, I was placed with that cousin who had molested me before, and it happened again. But as time went on, the family was able to get back together, but we were in a much smaller house, and things were kind of rough for my mom and dad, and economically, my mom was a maid, and my dad did odds and ends around town, that sort of thing. But then he started working as a bus driver. He was really proud. He was a really proud, fine bus driver, and that was a big deal for us because he began to lift his head. He was proud and he was happy, and I remember that. And we tried farming in this location that we're in, but it just didn't work out. I often regretted the fact that my dad didn't have time to spend with me. I thought beneath that he should have spent more time with me and grooming me to become the man that I wanted to be. But of course that didn't happen, and he died early on. He died in his early 50s. And again, that was another traumatic event in my life. So then the family was split up again, and myself and my younger brother lived with my mother in Griffin. We moved to Griffin, and I was just compelled to be the man of the house, and be in a different location. And I was different from the rest of the people in the community in terms of, I was a smart guy, I was told, but as far as being able to integrate and laugh and be accepted in the community, I worked hard at doing that. So I lost who I was just to be accepted. And in that process, I began to identify myself with other people, and I wanted to be like other people. And so I lost my self-identity, so to speak. And then I reached the age, because I was taller and started having a mustache, I was able to access alcohol at an early age. And so I was the person to go in the store and buy the alcohol, and we started drinking, and I started drinking at age 14. I lived with my mom, and she didn't like the idea of the drinking, but I'd slip and do it anyway. And somehow, out of the 6 people, I was always the one that got drunk and they had to bring home. That was this dire need to drink as much as I could. I don't know what I was trying to escape or whatever, but that was what I did. At any rate, I began to drink, and of course, during that time, hippies were around everywhere, and free love and smoking and all those other drugs around, and the attitude about drugs at that time wasn't quite what it is today. And so I found myself experimenting early on the effects of drugs and alcohol. But it wasn't unusual as much as my other siblings did the same thing. Started smoking cigarettes at age 14 simply because my younger brother had started smoking cigarettes. So it was important for me to identify with other people other than who I was. Being the person that I was, teachers in high school identified the fact that I had potential, but saw that my attitude toward my education and being absorbed and acting like other people was going to be something that sort of destroyed me. But I was having too much fun, enjoying life as it was. But at age 19, I had to start going to the doctor. Age 18, for ulcers. I began to have problems with my stomach. And now I look back on it, I think it was some of the holding the pressure on the inside, because I grew up in the era when if you had a moral disorder, it was you'd be locked away. So it still was nothing I thought about. anyway, because there was no one in my family who had exhibited mental health problems. I just knew what I had seen when I was in school. So I went to the doctor, and he would prescribe medication, and I lived with it. I started a family early on, went to college, and again, drinking and drugging was a part of the routine in between studies. And I graduated and got married, and let me back up a little bit to say that I wanted to be Ward Cleaver. I wanted to be Ward Cleaver. I wanted a wife who wore the pearls and the apron and the high heel shoes, and I wanted the 2-story house with the white fence around it, and I wanted 2 boys. Well, none of that happened. I have 5 children, but the first 3 were girls. So there was a lot of I internalized that as being a failure. Just my way of thinking. I didn't realize, I do now appreciate the fact that there were girls, but at that time it was necessary that I had a boy. I just had to have a boy. But anyway, so we continued to have children, and we with 5, and I did have a son out of that. And I started to work. I worked for the Department of Corrections early on, and stressful situation as a counselor, mostly taking notes. Working at the Diagnostic Center in Jackson, that became depressing, and I left there to go to the Diversion Center in Griffin. And this is when I was introduced to people who were quote-unquote alcoholics and drug addicts in recovery. And I looked down my nose because even though I was using, I never thought that I was a drug addict or an alcoholic, because I identified that as people who were laid out here in the park with the bottles under their head and that sort of thing. So my attitude toward them was of disdain. But anyway, I was experiencing problems, but I wouldn't dare let anybody know. But it got to the point where it interfered with my work. And I lost my job after 10 years. Can you imagine losing a state position after 10 years? But I did. And again, I took that really hard. And there was no one to talk to about it. It was kind of hard to explain because everybody blamed me and my drugs. And of course, I didn't want to hear anything about being the drug addict or the alcoholic that I was. But I found myself always going in and out of treatment for convenience sake, to save a job, to save a marriage, to escape law enforcement, whatever the case may be. So I was sort of clever, I thought. But I never really had an intention of stopping using drugs and alcohol. And of course, my drinking and drugging ended up causing my wife to leave me and taking the kids, and I ended up being arrested numerous times, back and forth, back to back, some spending time in corrections. And it's like the movie, Trading Places. But nevertheless, I still thought I was okay. And I got to the point where I had given up. I had decided that this is who I was. I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict, I wasn't going to amount to a hill of beans, even though I was told early on I had potential and I always could access employment, but I had gotten into a slump that no one was interested in hiring me because of my criminal record and the fact of my references. So I had given up pretty much. And I ended up coming to Atlanta. And I ended up, of course, down Peachtree and Pine, Raffensville area, homeless person. And I used to come to the church at North Avenue, the New Rush Hour Relief Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew what those meetings were, but my primary focus was to go there and warm up and get a cup of coffee. But on this particular day, this is February the 4th, 2001, something happened. I was there, and it was really cold outside, overcast, raining, perhaps like the day before yesterday. And I decided to stick around and drink 2 cups of coffee. And in that process, there was a gentleman standing before the group telling his recovery story. And I sat through that, and it was remarkable because his story paralleled mine. It was like he was telling my story. And afterwards, I went to him and I talked with him, and he, of course, became my mentor. I wasn't sure then if I could do this thing of recovery, but I tried it anyway. again, thinking that my problem was drinking and drugging. Well, after 6 months in sobriety in a treatment program, I realized that those feelings of not liking me or having an emptiness resurfaced, but I was determined not to drink or drug, and that's when I was referred to doctors who subsequently referred me to a psychiatrist, and I was prescribed Zoloft. And the idea of taking medications, my concept was so different because I've been drinking and drugging all my life. I just knew that when you take medication, it instantly changes everything. Everything gets well. You're well, and that was not the case. And it would make me really drowsy during the course of the day. I wasn't able to absorb what was going on in the classes, and so I complained that I didn't want to take it anymore. And the doctor thought enough of me to, well, she heard what I said, and we decided to change the regimen from morning to night. And I got some of the best sleep I ever had, first time. And I was able to deal with that. And I started realizing that perhaps I did have a mental disorder. Not wanting to accept it, but if that's what they say, it's my problem, I'll go along with it. And during the course of this, I began to meet other people who really had severe mental health issues. And I found myself sort of drawn to them and wanted to know more about what was going on with them. And I compare my story with their story, and what I was really doing is separating myself from them. Oh, well, I'm not like that, so I really don't have a mental health problem. And the more I became involved in the recovery process, I learned, of course, that different strokes for different folk, but I too had that. I had that same diagnosis, and of course, my diagnosis is that of severe depression. So the idea of taking medication for the rest of my life sort of made me not want to participate in the recovery process. But then I had someone to tell me, one of my peers to say, well, you only have to take it today. Then that was a whole different way of looking at it. I don't have to take it today. Just like recovering from alcoholism and drugs. I only have to not use today, and tomorrow will take care of itself. So that's been my approach. And of course, now I that hole in my heart or my soul that I was searching for has been filled with a spiritual awakening, that I'm who I am. I'm special, I'm unique, I'm valuable as I am as a person, just like I am, with the histories, with the things that I've experienced. It sort of gives me compassion for those kinds of people who have gone through the same thing, that I'm no different from anybody else. Everyone has burden to bear, so to speak, and it's just that mine surfaced at a late age. And I still didn't want to accept the fact. And I look back for reasons to say that, this is just something I'm going through and I get over it. But the more I know about myself and what I want to do with my life and being a part of a peer support group, I know that this is something that I need to stick with because I'm getting so much out of it. My life is turned around tremendously. I'm paying rent today. That's something different. I'm able to share my experience and not be looked down the nose, like I did with other people. It's coming back at me, but it's different today. Then it got to the point where I thought I could come off medications altogether, and I really went to that approach. But it was funny the way my doctor did it. She says, Charles, you need a pair of new glasses. And it just so happened I had just gotten a pair from JCPenney. They had a sale going on. And I'm like, I don't get it. She said, you're stuck. And then she suggested that I start Lexapro, different medication. And of course, the change made me feel a little different, uneasy, off balance, and I was tempted to quit altogether. And I was encouraged by my peers to give it a little more time. So through the process, I was able to live with it. My symptoms on as bad as they used to be. I'm not as nervous around people as I used to be. I used to be afraid of people. I wouldn't dare show that, but I would overcompensate to make people think I was okay. But today it's okay just to be me. So I'm duly diagnosed. I have substance abuse, mental health, and the mental health diagnosis. But I'm able to keep it in check simply by doing the things I need to do. There's a passage in the book that talks about acceptance, and acceptance is the key. Today I've accepted the fact that I am duly diagnosed, and there are certain things that, because I'm duly diagnosed, that I must do. And those things that I choose to do are using the wellness tools that keep me focused on enjoying life, because today I truly have a life. I'm living today, as opposed to when I was suffering or trying to avoid life altogether. So it's been an occasion for me to, and the funny thing about it is that my work with Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network allows me to work based on my experience. I'm a certified peer specialist, and that's labels. That's something else, and it's all good because people respect the fact that, hey, there's one that sort of, excuse the way I'm gonna put this, flew over the cuckoo's nest. And so if I can fly over the cuckoo's nest, another one can do the same thing. So I'm going around demonstrating to other people that and modeling recovery and affording those people who wish to engage in a wellness process to learn some of the skills that I use in order to keep myself sort of on a wellness mode. I know that as a part of keeping my dually diagnosis under control, I also am taking care of myself health-wise. My focus is on my personal health, and also I focus on my spiritual health as well. So it's like an overlapping combination. If you take care of one, it feeds into the other. And I've learned that people with diagnoses, of course, because of the medications and the course of our lifestyle, most of us lives are shortened because of our diagnosis. So I don't want to be one of those people. Now, I do have people in the family who use, I'll put it that way. And I did have a couple of brothers who were diagnosed as alcoholics. And, well, I won't say diagnosed, but said they were alcoholics and were able to get their lives back together. So my focus today is not on the people who are drinking, because I can associate with those kind of people. My focus is not on the drink. My focus is on who I am and why I can't drink. So it's a different approach to that altogether. So that's kind of where I am. I feel okay. I feel good about who I am, thanks to what I've learned through the mental health system and using the tools that are available to me and the support that I've gained from supporters. So that's it.
I think it's interesting you talk about route to recovery and you are started with some kind of
Right. He's still my sponsor, by the way. I didn't let go of that guy. Yeah, he's still part of my network, recovery network.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Personal, a lot of folks look at now and say, I'm not that.
Well, and I hope so, because my son was just like me, and he was on the road to destruction, and I couldn't get him to see things the way I saw it. He always used the things that I did for an excuse for him to do what he was doing. But God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. He too is now in recovery. So I couldn't. If I could have saved him, I would have. But I couldn't even save myself. So all I can do is sort of model what recovery can be and what it can bring about. So I'm real happy for that.
We're very happy too.
Oh, I am too. But are there any questions? Okay. Well, thank you for allowing me to share my story. I know it's just the beginning of, from being a homeless person, I've been able to travel these United States. And it's only due to the fact that I took suggestions and took the risk of trying something different, taking medications and listening to supporters. And it has really, here's the key though, trusting. Having an intimate relationship with myself and with other people, that is, allowing people to get close to me and not reliving or blaming myself like I did in the past. Now it's more at ease. I know that as a child I couldn't have done anything to bring on that abuse that I received, but I'm just hopeful today.